In the last video, I animated a bouncing ball in spline only. In this one, it's mostly in stepped, with just a hint of spline. So let me show you how to do it. Okay, so what we need to worry about right now are the extremes, the ups and the downs for the blocking pass. I'm not going to worry so much about timing, I just want to make sure that my ups and my downs are reading well. So we're going to go 2 frames later. My ball's already up. I'll bring it down. I'm just worrying about the translates at the moment. 2 frames later, we go up. And whenever you're doing stuff in stepped, it's a good idea to flip your keys and just watch the spacing. See how the up position's here and how the up position is down here. Maybe it needs to be a little bit higher. It felt kind of low. Cool. And then 2 frames later, we go down and we just rinse and repeat. 2 frames up. Check your height to see if that's reading okay. And if you're ever like confused because this is in a nebulous Maya void and it's hard to see spacing, you can always use an arc tracker to see what's actually going on with your spacing. And I like the Animate one. It's a lot better than the Maya default one. And we're just going to go down the timeline, add our ups and our downs, not really caring about timing, just thinking more spacing. Okay, here I think we're going to start dribbling. So on ones, I'll just go up and down a few times. Cool. And now we know that the ball needs to roll to a stop, so I'll just go 2 frames later, go here. And what I'd like to do is add a little bit of an overshoot. And the overshoot's cool because it also is a way to build in your eases because I'm favoring keys. What I can do here, 2 frames later, I can just tap this over ever so slightly. So the distance between 29 and 31 is pretty big, which is fine. But then I want the distance from 31 to 33 to be a little bit tighter because I'm trying to ease out here. And the overshoot, I think, will just tap it back a little bit to the left. And if I really wanted to, I could go 2 frames later and just tap it ever so slightly to the left again. Like I'm favoring those keys. The spacing should be super minute. Cool. So when you play it, it looks super fast and it looks really bad. And that's totally fine. You'll notice that on the first key, everything is keyed. And then I have auto key on, so the only thing that's being affected are the translates, just X and Y. But in this stepped workflow, it's a really good idea to lock down those values. And that way, when you're going into spline, you're not going to have any weird interpolations of drifting keys if you didn't have every single channel keyed. So I like to go in and just mash the S key. I'll hit the period button to go to the next frame. And I'll just keep mashing S so everything gets keyed. It's a little bit on the paranoia side, but honestly, it's a good way, it's a good workflow to just lock those values down so you don't get screwed later on. You'll notice I'm not really touching the rotates, and I feel like for the bouncing ball in particular, it's going to be just a jumbled mess, and why deal with it here? There's other ways we can do, like even in this process, to make the rotations feel not so bad in stepped, but we'll get to it later. I think right now we'll bring up the graph editor. So window, animation, graph editor, and let's space all this out. Like the last video, I think starting off with the first bounce on 8 frames, it felt good. So we'll do the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll grab all this and I'll scoot it. 8 frames. And then every bounce afterwards, we're just going to reduce a frame. The next bounce will be 7 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Grab all this, move it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Grab it, move it. Now 6 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. One, down on twos. 1, 2. 1, 2. And then our dribble frames. 1, 1, 1, 1. Maybe we can add another one here. So I'll get tight. I'll zoom in with pan zoom by holding forward slash and pan around with middle mouse while holding forward slash and right click to zoom in and out. So if I want to add another dribble here, you see how it's like going crazy? I can always just copy this value on 67 and bring it to 68. I'll just middle mouse drag frame 67, move it over to 68 and key it. And you'll see in the graph editor that it was straight copy paste. I think I actually need to copy paste it again. So I'm going to scoot all this stuff here by one frame and do the same thing. Middle mouse 68, paste it on 69. So now on 68, I can go up. 69, I can go here. And that should be good. So how many dribble frames do we have? 1, 2, 3. Yep, that sounds good. Cool. And now here is the part where the ball rolls to a stop. I think what we did last time was 12 frames, just half a second. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We'll scoot all this stuff over here. Now we have this ease out on twos. 1, 2. So how many frames do we need? Let's try 8 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'll grab all this stuff, move it. Now for the recoil back, let's try 8 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Scoot it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Move it. Now let's see how that feels first in spline, and then we'll switch it all to stepped. Okay. The reason why I like to do it first in spline before I switch it over to stepped is that I want to feel this interpolation, because if I already had it in stepped, it's hard for me to tell if I just watch it and I see that we go all the way here in about 11 frames, 12 frames. It's hard for my brain to understand it, so that's why I like to check it in spline. And if you really wanted to, you could check it in linear. When you do it in linear, by just hitting that button here, it gets rid of all eases, and it's just like a straight linear trajectory. So this could also be another way to test and see if this is working well. But for me, I'm a huge fan of just watching it in spline. This does feel a little fast. I'm going to move it just 2 frames. Okay, it still feels a little fast, so I'll grab all this and move it again 2 frames. That still feels too fast, so let's move it again. That doesn't feel too bad. Maybe in the ease part might be too quick, so I'll just grab all this, move it by 2. That feels pretty good. Cool. I'm actually going to rotate the ball again. On frame 69, I'm just grabbing that rotation control and I'm going to move it a ton, just that way. Pretty crazy. Go find it in the graph editor. I'm going to see what's happening on frame 97. I want to extend that rotation up to frame 97 before the ball goes backwards. So I'll rotate it even more just to see. And here I think this needs to tone down a bit. I'm going to show you a little trick on getting my rotations down first in spline, and then we'll switch it back to stepped. Cool. And now here is where the ball goes backwards, so I'm going to add a little bit of rotation there. Again, not really being too mindful of what the curve is doing. Not so much, at least. I will tone it down for sure, but I just want to rough it in. Okay, cool. So the quick and dirty way of just getting your keys on the rotations to be on top of the translates, just have them both selected, and then just hit the period button to go to the next key and hit S, and you'll see in my graph editor I'm populating it now with keys. And now we can hit the stepped tangent button, and now our ball is in stepped, and we can build from here. So now we need to work on the breakdowns, because right now we just have the key poses of the up and the downs. Breakdowns are super important because that's how you build in the ease in and ease out. And it's also a nice way to just not have crazy even spacing. So how do we build in breakdowns? You're essentially subdividing. So we go in between frame 1 and frame 9 and we ask ourselves, okay, where should the ball be? What we want to avoid is just going to an exact 50%, because that's honestly what you're going to get anyway if you use auto tangent. If I delete this key and I go either to linear or auto tangent, you'll see that the ball is at a 50%. And that's not what we want. We want to think about favoring our keys in order to build in ease in and ease out. So if I go back to stepped, we have to ask ourselves, okay, we know the ball needs to go down, but are we going to favor the down or are we going to favor the up? Well, if you're trying to create hang time, you need to favor the up because you're spending more time up on top before you go down. One thing that's annoying too with default Maya, if you change your tangent type, it's going to keep switching it out of stepped into auto tangent. You could fix that in the settings, but I'm not a huge fan of that. Honestly, for me, I just mash it again. It's constant and annoying and I hate it, but if anyone else knows how to do it better and more efficiently, please say so in the comments below. Okay, so if my breakdown is now here, we're spending more time on top and then we're going to go really fast down, which is pretty sweet. But we're not done yet. We still need to break it down even more. You can have a ton of breakdowns in between your keys. So frame 7, we want to go down, but we don't want to be 50% again, and we don't want to ease towards the ground because gravity is pushing on the ball. The ball would never slow down before it hits the ground and then bounce. It's going to keep accelerating. So we're going to scoot this up a bit, in which case, if we go to frame 5, we might scoop that up a bit. Now we need to break down frame 3. So maybe we're closer to frame 1. You'll see that my graph editor now is crazy right here. So always remember to mash the stepped tangent button. Okay, so what does that look like? A little slow. So let's adjust the spacing here. It feels a little slow on the first down. So I think we will adjust the spacing a bit. We'll pull this up on frame 7. We'll pull this up and back on frame 5. Frame 3, maybe we're here. Cool. And now we go check this part out. We need to break down this motion. So how many frames? That was 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Cool. We're at a really weird interval. One thing you can do also to help favor your keys, you can always middle mouse drag frame 16 to frame 12, let's say. So you're duplicating that value and then you just scoot it back. Actually, I'm going to move that to frame 13. So I have room to break down frame 11. Ball comes up. Here, we're going to favor the down just a little bit so that we can pop up quicker on frame 13 and then get to frame 16. So because we did 3 frames here on the hang time, we should probably do the same here. 3 frames after the apex of the bounce, we're here now. About equidistant from frame 13. I feel like maybe I could go more on the hang time up here. Now we need to break down frame 21. We're in between these 2 keys. We want to stay up high. Okay, frame 27, we need to be closer to the apex, which means 31 needs to be equidistant to 27, like that, to get your hang time. Frame 25, we should bounce up. Frame 31, need to go a little bit higher so that we can feel the impact on 35. And every time you do a change, it's a good idea to watch your animation, react to it, do any adjustments that you need to do before you move on. Then you continue down the timeline. So now we have this weird 5 frame thing happening here. So how do you fix that? Probably frame 37, we favor the apex on 3s, which is kind of weird, but I think we'll be okay. Let's make 43 and 37 be kind of similar. Work your way down. Frame 47, favor up to the apex on frame 49. 51, go like that. Okay, so now we're dealing with 3 frames, which is pretty crazy. So I think on frame 51, let's zoom in here with pan zoom, we will scoot this up towards the apex. 56 is the apex, which means 57 needs to be here. And the reason why it's interpolating here is because I haven't hit the step tangent button again. So let's do that. Eliminate any free in-betweens that Maya is giving us. We want to craft every single breakdown and every single key pose. So here, because we're on 2s, our breakdowns need to be on 1s, like so. And now we're in dribble territory, so let's adjust these heights a little bit on 1s. Cool. And the one thing I forgot to do, honestly, is to grab all the translate Y down keys, because I think I'm going beyond the 0 value, but 0 is basically, touching the ground. So right now I'm getting into negative integers. Just grab all your down keys and then hit 0 up here on the right of your graph editor stats. Enter. So now they're all zeroed out. Okay. Now that we have the entire thing broken down as far as the up and downs, let's hit play. Let's fix our translate X because it's a little wonky. Translate X is pretty wild right now. You can see right here, it's just all over the place. There's no consistency happening throughout. So I think what I'll do, we'll go to frame 69 again. I'm going to delete all these in-betweens. And we're going to change this to be more linear at the top. And I'm just going to clean up a little bit of this junk too. I think maybe this needs to go up more, because I'm trying to slow this down towards the end so it can roll to a stop. So that value on 69 was just too low. So we cranked it up just a little bit. Okay, so this is going to look really bad if you have certain things in stepped and certain things in spline. So we'll just go back in here and we'll start mashing the S key as we go down the timeline. Cool. So now when we go back to stepped mode, this should feel a little bit better. And now that we fixed the issue with translate X, I think it's safe to say we can go back in here and clean up all our breakdown keys. So here I'll go a little bit higher. Maybe lower on the apex, higher up here. And you can see right now, I'm building in how my eases are going to be without relying too much on what the graph editor wants to do. This is all viewport based. I want this to look as clean as possible in camera, and then we can worry about the graph editor later. I just want this to feel right. And I'm just scooting my breakdown keys here a little higher towards the apex, so I have slower spacing at the top and then faster spacing on the way down. Okay, what does that feel like? Cool. Not bad. The rotations are still kind of wild, but we'll deal with that after the fact. Now, how do you break something like this down? For me, I think I said this in the last video, and I probably said it again here too. I'm a broken record, but I'm a huge fan of breaking things down into 8s. I know earlier we had stuff on 7s and 5s and stuff, but that's really specific to the bouncing ball. So when I'm doing any type of spacing here, 8s is nice because then you can go from 8 to 4, then 4 to 2, and if you have to, 2 to 1. If you're trying to break something down on 6, how do you do that? 3 and 3, then what? 2 and 1 together? It's a little messy for me. So let's keep going. So let's count and see how many frames we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so we're at 18. But 16 is good. 16 means it's a closer number to 8. So what I will do, I will actually copy the translate on 85. I'm just going to tap it back a little bit. Cool. Now we go 8 frames back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Where's that breakdown going to be? Probably here. And this is why I'm a huge fan of having the arc tracker, because I can literally see my timing. If you treat this like a 2D timing chart, let's bring out Epic Pen, then you have a line here. Oh man, yellow is probably not the best color. Here, a key here, and a key here. So already I can see that it's kind of decelerating. This position is a little bit longer than this position. Okay, so now that this is on 8s, I can break this down onto 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. What does that look like? Probably here. And if you flip your keys, you can kind of feel like it's easing out. Let's break this down again on 4s. 1, 2, 3, 4. What's nice is that it's on spline, so it's kind of giving me that data for me, but I don't want to accept what Maya gives me. So I'm going to scoot it ever so slightly to the right. Mash the stepped tangent button again. You can kind of see it easing out in the graph editor. These two keys are closer together. These two keys are closer together. These ones are a little bit further apart. So you can actually manipulate this in the graph editor too, like so, to show that ease out. For some reason, there's a dip down here. Let me fix that. Boom. And now we just keep going. So I know I had 2 frames here. Let's see how many frames to the next key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Copy, paste, and move it down a bit. Cool. Let's break this down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Scoot it. Okay, and now we're going to go backwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nice. Good number. So on 4s, what are we favoring? Are we going to favor the top, or are we going to favor the bottom? Whenever you're changing direction, in any direction, left to right, up to down, you need to have more space in order to do that, which means you need to favor your keys. So I'm going to copy that value, paste it onto 101, and instead of getting closer to here, I'm actually going to go favor the top. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks good. So that means on the breakdown, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to get closer to that key instead. Let me turn off this guy. Cool. The rotations, as like I said before, are crazy because I don't have enough data. We can always hit auto tangent again to get that result from earlier. And I'm going to select the translates. And now we do the same old thing where we just go to the next key and start mashing. We want those rotation keys to be on top of those translate keys. Super, super important. Hit the step tangent button. Hide the controls. And now the ending needs a lot of love, and we'll go back into it and fix it. But for the most part, it's working pretty nicely. The thing that is looking a little odd, obviously, is that because it's on 4s, it's feeling a little stroby, which means you need to go in here and break it down on 2s. Now, you can, if you want, actually go in here and play around with your spacing on 2s to see how this feels. Or you could use Animate or any other tween machine and just give it a 50% and see what that's like. Or you can be really lazy and just go in here, change all these keys to auto tangent, and then you can start deleting the weird little like hitches, like so, and start adding keys on 2s. 2, 2, key. I'm just going every 2 frames and hitting the S key. Same thing here at the end. Now I hit stepped again. Here on the rotates, we got to do the same thing. Just mashing keys on twos. All right. What does that look like? You'll notice there was a little hiccup there, and what's nice about working this way, it's easy to find, like right there, boom. Right there is a pop, so what you can do is grab all those keys and just bring it down so that the pop doesn't feel like a pop. Boop. Maybe a little bit more. Cool. And now the translates don't really bother me at the end, but it's the rotates that are not feeling too good. So you can hit the period button to jump around, and you can see right there, it starts to ease out too much. So you can grab it and rotate it down. Same thing right here. This doesn't feel like it's rotating enough, so you can move it down. And then just work your way down the timeline. You want to flip your keys every single time just so you can feel this out. Okay, now I'm rotating a little bit too much and there's no translates. It's too subtle that it's not moving. Yep, right there. So we'll kick that up a bit. Okay, I might have to adjust this because that's a huge pop. That's the cool thing about stepped blocking is that it shows you the spacing a lot more clearly than if it was just loose spaghetti splines. And it's a lot easier to build in, and visually it's a lot easier to clean up your ease in and your ease outs this way. And that's pretty much it. You're going in and you're cleaning things up channel by channel to make sure that things are reading nice. So rotating backwards, so the ball needs to change direction here. Okay, now that the translates are easing, those rotates need to ease in a little bit more subtly. Then we hit play. There's still that weird pop right here. When you're trying to fix pops and stepped and you're not really sure how to go about it, one thing you can do is change it to spline, and then it'll be a little bit more apparent. And right here, it's right there. For some reason, the distance from here to here is getting tight, which is causing it to slow down. But then this distance from here to here is really steep, causing it to accelerate. So you can just grab all this stuff and then scoot it up so that you're following the energy from the past. And that should clean it up. Switch it back to stepped. Let's see what that looks like. I know I'm going to go like super OCD mode on this and just try to fix that for hours, but we don't have time. So let's get into the squash and stretch part. Luckily, all this is... So this part should be relatively easy now that we have the keys solidified. So I'm just going to go in and find my downs. I have the red controller selected, which controls the squash and stretch rotation. We're going to find all the downs and just set a key with the red control that will affect the squash and stretch. We're going to stop the squash and stretch at 49. We're not going to be squashing and stretching the entire time, just on those big moments. I'm going to also select the squash and stretch control itself and add some keys on there. Forgot to adjust it on frame 1 because we're coming in with this type of trajectory. Let me turn on the arc tracker again. So the squash and stretch controller should be going that way, and it's going to stay that way up until frame 7. So frame 11, we scoot it that way towards the new trajectory. Frame 21, we rotate it that way. Frame 25, we point it the other way. Frame 33, we inverse that. And rinse and repeat, same old thing. Frame 47, we angle it. And then we can terminate it. I just zeroed it out here. Then we grab that triangle again for the squash and stretch. Mash the S key over and over again. So we are stretching here. Squashing. So frame 7, there'll be a little bit of a stretch. Go back in time. Like I said in the last video, we need to stay as a ball for a lot longer than we thought. It should only be stretching on those fast frames. So here we squash, keeping volume preserved from frame 1. We don't want to squash it like crazy because that would just break the anatomy of the ball. So give it a little bit of a squash. Frame 11, you stretch. Frame 13, I think we could... Frame 15, I think we can zero out the squash and stretch so the ball reaches normalcy. Up until frame 19, the ball can still stay a ball, but frame 21, we stretch it. Frame 23, we squash. Frame 25, we stretch. Frame 29, I think we can zero out the squash and stretch there. Frame 31, probably stay in a ball. Frame 31, same thing, stay as a ball, but then you stretch it a little bit on 33 so that you can squash on 35. And then you give yourself a little bit of a stretch on 37, only to go back to a ball on frame 40. So we're just copy pasting that zeroed out key. Okay, here we're going to add just a little bit of a squash, probably no stretch anymore. Yeah, let's grab the red control and those arrows. Go ahead and start mashing those keys. That's one annoying part about doing things in stepped, is that you have to make sure that you don't have any drifting keys and you're locking down those values. Go back to stepped mode. And then sometimes you'll notice and this is partially the reason why you want to have your keys on top of one another. Frame 13, it's showing that there's a stretch frame. So I'm just going to grab those keys and bring it back. And just double checking the timeline, making sure that there's no random pops of the squash and stretch. What does that look like now? And not bad. Here's another method of doing it. You're basically favoring design more so than timing when you're doing stuff in stepped blocking. And it just helps, having Maya not show you all the keys for free. It's pretty helpful to work in this step blocking phase too, just so that you're not having all this free movement that Maya gives you. And if you're not comfortable with it, it's really easy to just accept what you see, but it might not be the right thing. So when you strip away any of that and you're just focusing on the keys that you yourself have put in, then that's the real magic in animation because you're building something out of nothing. I know I did a lot of things in Spline for this and then reverted it to the step tangent, but that's just one way of working. If you don't want to do that, that's totally fine. By all means, you don't have to go into Spline, but for me, it's a lot easier to just see what the trajectory looks like and then revert back to the step tangent where you're focusing more on posing more so than timing, if that makes sense. So if this helps you, great. Like and share, do all that fun YouTube stuff. I still don't know what I'm doing. I've changed my tech a little bit and fixed my mic. That's about it. I swear to God, if this microphone has been muted the entire time, I'm going to be so mad. Okay, bye.